Welcome to the Butterfly Effect. I'm Chris Horner. This is stage 9 of the Vuelta España. This is the Sunday big showdown mountain stage. Now these are back-to-back stages because yesterday was a mountain stage 2. So we know today is going to have all kinds of drama throughout the stage. But man, was it a good start to today's stage 9. 170 kilometers today, about 110 miles in length, 5 categorized climbs, but it's really the last climb at 3.9 kilometers. Just about 13% average, but it has sections as steep as 24% up to the line. The last 3.9 kilometers is no joke. It's full gas, steep all the way up, so there's not going to be much of a draft. That means this is going to be a very good finish for the GC battle here on stage 9, and it could be a good battle for the front group if a breakaway should stay off today. Now, when the action starts, it's hot and heavy right away, and you see 4 riders go up the road, and it's Thomas DeHint leading this group of 4. Behind, we see just a pause for a couple hundred meters as the peloton goes curb to curb, and it almost looks like we're going to have an easy beginning to this stage 9 of the Vuelta España, but that's not going to happen once Kern Farmer starts attacking on the right side of the road. It lights the paper up, and from here on, the book of matches is going to be flaming all over the place as there's attacks, followed by more attacks, and followed by more attacks throughout today's stage. Mads Pedersen put in some great attacks early in this stage trying to get up to that group of 4. That didn't happen. Then we see Russo, and he throws in an attack, and he's got company because he has Carapaz along, and Carapaz has company because he has the race leader's red jersey with Remco Evenepoel following Richard Carapaz on the attack. So that group gets stalled out, and then all of a sudden we start seeing some more attacks. About 131 kilometers to go is when we're going to see Marc Soler, and he's getting upset with the Alpecin de Koenig rider. We see the Alpecin de Koenig rider drift from the right side just over to the left, and that's blocking the lane there of Soler, and Soler is upset. First, he gives a big push to the Alpecin rider with his shoulder, and then he pushes him with his hand, starts flaring hands out all over the place. Alpecin de Koenig rider is like, dude, I don't even know what you're talking about. Soler's getting upset again and pointing over to the guardrail again. And while Soler's throwing arguments left and right there with the Alpecin de Koenig, then we're going to see the real attack go. And it's going on the right side of the road. And we see it's our Ensman from DSM. He's got Jimmy Johnson, Alpecin de Koenig going up the road. And we're going to see both Soler and the rider he was arguing with from Alpecin de Koenig look over to the right side of the road as they're watching the race go up the road. Congratulations, Solerism at its best right here, arguing too much and then watching the break go. Now there's 10 guys in this front move, and our Ensman's there, and our Ensman's a threat on the general classification at just around 3 minutes to Remco Evenepoel. There's 9 other guys up there for company in the form of Louis Meintjes from Intermarché. He's 8.5 minutes back on the general classification. Samuele Battistella from Astana is in that group. Eduardo Zambanini from Bahrain Victorious. Dylan Van Barle from Ineos made it across. Filippo from Lotto's there. Jimmy Johnson, Alpecin de Koenig. I told you he was up in that move. Robert Stannard, his teammate, Alpecin de Koenig made it. That's 2 from that team. Jose Manuel Diaz, Burgos BH, the small Spanish team. They're up in there. And then the last team, Arceus Samsic, Simone Guglielmi. Now, with those 10 riders up the road, we're going to see all of a sudden a pause in the breakaway in the peloton behind because it's race leaders, red jersey, Remco Evenepoel from Quick-Step. Now, they've done a lot of work in the early parts of this race. Julian Alaphilippe covering a bunch of attacks, setting tempo on the front, slowing things down. Remco Evenepoel was following Richard Carapaz on just about every one of his attacks. And now with the race leaders pulling over the side of the road for a nature break, that means that front group of 10 has got a legitimate shot of going all the way to the line. Now, while the peloton back there is taking a nature break, all of a sudden we go back up to the front group of 10 and we see that it's the DSM rider, Timin Arensman, who gets on the radio, and then all of a sudden he drops out of the front group of 10. Now, I have no idea why he's dropping out of the front group of 10. Nobody's chasing from behind at all. There's no chase. They're actually taking a nature break right now while our Ensman from DSM, like I said, about 3 minutes, 20 seconds down on the general classification. So we could have had an amazing battle watching the GC guys trying to fight back here to keep the time gap to this front group. But instead, with our Ensman dropping out for what looks like absolutely no reason at all, he goes back to the front group, and that means that there's going to be a little bit of a pause because now the biggest threat up there in the general classification is at about 8.5 minutes, Louis Meintjes from Intermarché. So no big threat for Quick-Step. The only problem is now when we hit the first little bump that's coming up, we're going to see some attacks, and it's Marc Soler, Santiago Buitrago's there. Jay Vine is there. We won 2 stages already here at the Vuelta España. So Quick-Step don't like this move. They're going to get on the front. They're going to bring it back. And then we're going to see that it's Solerism attacking again. Right after this group gets brought back, it's going to be Remco Evenepoel, and he starts arguing along with Soler. Soler's in his second argument going on here, and it's only been like 10 or 15K since the last one. So we know there's some Solerism happening. When I'm sitting on the couch, I'm thinking, hey, Remco Evenepoel, if Solerism wants to go up the road, let him go up the road. But then all of a sudden, I see exactly why Remco Evenepoel was arguing with Soler. He knows because behind, while everyone was taking a nature break, that's when Solerism must have thrown in his attack, because we start seeing, guess who? The teammate of Soler is coming back on, and it's Almeida back there, their GC guy here at the Vuelta España, that was back there taking a nature break, probably chasing the whole time to get back up to the peloton. I saw some other hitters back there. Vincenzo Nibali was coming back. Brandon McNulty was coming back. There were some Jumbo-Visma guys that were caught peeing back there too. So that is why Remco Evenepoel was given an earful to Soler, who should have never been attacking when he had his teammate, his GC teammate, off the back taking a nature break. After that, that's when the peloton finally calms down and Quick-Step starts riding a little bit of tempo. Now that group that was 10 up there, that now became 9 because our Ensman's getting caught with about 115 kilometers still to go. After all those altercations back there, we look at that group of 9, and they're just setting a nice tempo, and we go back to the field, and we see it's Quick-Step, and they're setting a tempo that's going to allow this break at about a 5.5 minute gap throughout the middle of this stage 9. When we get closer to the finish, that gap will start dropping down to about 4 minutes, 4.5 minutes, as Quick-Step, in my mind, may be pulling a little bit too hard for my preference here. Now, if they want to win the stage, go 100%, you can say, okay, Remco Evenepoel's got a shot at winning the stage because this last 3.9 kilometers, crazy steep at 13%. So that can kind of make a little bit of sense. But with what I've seen out of Quick-Step, I know they looked great yesterday, but they didn't look so great for the whole week before that. So I'd prefer to give that front group with Louis Meintjes a little bit more time because he's at 8.5 minutes on the general classification. Instead, they're holding it at a gap that's going to put a little bit of wear and tear on their men on the front, but they're still going to do a great job getting all the way into this last climb with 3.9 kilometers to go. Now with about 20K to go in the back group of GC, it's all of a sudden starting to get nervous because everybody back there knows that once we get under 20K to go, the racing is going to start furious and hard because the road's going to narrow and they're going to go up over the last KOM. The front group still at around 4 minutes now. They're not panicking too much because, like I said, the last climb's 3.9%, and Louis Meintjes is a pure climber. So up front, that group of 9, they're riding well together. Now, throughout today's whole stage, there was KOMs all over the place. Like I said, at least 4 KOMs throughout today's stage, plus the finish if you're in that breakaway and you can make it that far. There wasn't much action to tell you about in the KOMs, though, because all the camera shots were absolutely terrible from the race organizers, taking them from the back of the field. But I'll tell you what, it was Albacete de Koenig that were getting most of the KOMs there with Robert Stannard up there and, of course, with Jimmy Johnson. Now, with that group still coming in with 20 kilometers to go, after they cross the final KOM, they're going to drop down the descent. Road's narrow, gets technical. Then we get around 12, 11 kilometers to go, and that's when we start seeing the big attacks happening in this front group because nobody wants to go to the beginning of this last climb with Louis Meintjes, the climber from Intermarché, locked on and give him a shot here at winning on stage 9. First guy starting to attack is going to be Albacete de Koenig. Great tactic right here. It's Jimmy Johnson going up the road, and he's got some company from Lotto Soudal. That move will get brought back, and then we'll see the big attack go. Jimmy Johnson and Samuele Battistella from Astana. This is the move that gets away from this group of 9. Now there's 7 guys chasing 2, but they start getting about a 30-second gap to the 7 riders chasing behind. Race starts getting really technical though as it starts narrowing, and all of a sudden we start seeing the curves come up left and right. And with 7 kilometers to go, Battistella's had enough of Jimmy Johnson wheel sucking. He will not take a pull for anything, and we see Battistella, he starts looking back, throwing his arms up in the air, says a few curse words that I don't say here on the Butterfly Effect because this is a family channel. Other than a bunch of knuckleheads out there, that's as far as I want to take it. Now, under 7 kilometers to go, after they finally start arguing, Battistella gets back on the front and he starts pulling hard because Astana won a stage win here on stage 9. We start getting under 5 kilometers to go. This is going to be the really crucial section before the final climb starts because it's narrow and crazy technical, like 180 hairpin turns, tiny roads, buildings on the side, brick walls on the side. It's a very technical run into this final climb here on stage 9. Now the 2 riders up front, they do a great job of getting through all the technical parts on this descent as they start the final climb with 3.9 kilometers to go. Jimmy Johnson, who I said has been wheel sucking throughout the last 7 kilometers, now he takes off and starts getting a gap on Battistella, but Stella's still digging in deep trying to bring back Jimmy Johnson. Now let's go back to the GC battle because things were on from 20K to go when it got nervous. They went over the final KOM on today's stage 2. Now dropping down the descent, we see it's Quick Step still on the front, but a big battle for real estate at the front here. Now we come into the start getting into the real technical sections under 5.5 kilometers to go, and all of a sudden we see a crash, and guess who's involved? It's Ineos' Theo Gegenhardt and Jumbo-Visma's Chris Harper. Now I forgot to tell you guys, but at the beginning of this race we had a bunch of abandons before the race even started. Sepp Kuss from Jumbo-Visma went out, and this is his teammate Chris Harper on the ground. That means Primoz Roglic doesn't have any pure climbers left with him up front. But guess what? Quick-Step had some bad luck before the stage started too because Peter Siri went out with a COVID positive. Sepp Kuss had some kind of a fever, I believe, if I remember correctly, on what they said. One other rider that dropped out COVID positive was going to be Wout Poels from Bahrain Victorious. So now with Chris Harper on the ground, Primoz Roglic is in trouble because up front we're in the crazy technical part of this descent, and it's Julian Alaphilippe going full gas. He'll sit up out of the right turn, look back over his shoulder, and he'll put his arm out and tell Remco Evenepoel, take it easy through this section. It's going to get dangerous. But when we look further back in the pictures, it's already dangerous because after that crash from Chris Harper and Theo Gegenhardt, the field is split up. Primoz Roglic is in a little bit bad position. He's about 20th position back. Then we see the last little bump before the climb starts proper, and Julian Alaphilippe is drilling it. Movistar's locked onto his wheel, and we look a little further back. You can see Primoz Roglic. He's just in front of the gap, but if I read it right, it looks like the gap was starting in front of him, and he accelerated past that. As now in the picture, you can see the gap happen just behind him. Now when the climb starts proper, Julian Alaphilippe is going into it full gas. He's got his teammate on his wheel, Van Wilder, and then it's, of course, Remco Evenepoel in the race leader's red jersey up front in the battle to win today's stage because they'll start this final climb with just under 3-minute gap on all the GC favorites. Now all of a sudden we see it's Louis Meintjes with about 2.6 kilometers to go in today's stage. He starts catching on to Battistella, who's catching back up to Jimmy Johnson up there from Albacete de Cunha. Louis Meintjes won't hang around long as he accelerates hard, and he drops both Jimmy Johnson and Battistella, getting dropped for a second time going up this final climb. Up front, though, with that gap starting to take place, Louis Meintjes knows now I'm a pure climber. I don't need to hesitate. I'm going full gas at this moment. The Intermarché riders accelerating. He gets the gap, and it's opening up bigger and bigger to the riders behind. He's not going to see any of those guys ever again as he's just flying up this climb at every point in time. He looks fantastic. With about 1 kilometer to go is when they got a false little descent coming down where he'd get a little more rest. And then as the climb starts to pitch back up, he's going to go into the crowd of people with about 600 meters to go. He's accelerating still 100%, just making sure no one from behind can catch him. With 200 meters to go as the road bends right, now all of a sudden the road is concrete here, and you see as he's trying to get as much traction as he can because this road is steep all the way up to the finish. Louis Meintjes will do a fabulous job to solo all the way up to the top of the stage here and win today's stage 9 for Intermarché, which has put on a show throughout last season and now throughout this 2022 season. Intermarché is not holding anything back, and they're performing with all the big boy teams here at the European Peloton with this stage win from Louis Meintjes. Let me remind you guys, last year at the Vuelta a España, they wore the race leader's red jersey with 2 different riders, and now they're getting another stage win with Louis Meintjes solo on today's stage. Behind Louis Meintjes, second on the stage is Samuel Battistella. Great ride, man. Hey, you put on quite a show in today's race. Second on the stage isn't bad. Congratulations. Third on the stage, Eduardo Zambanini from Bahrain Victorious. And then now we go back to the GC battle because it started once they got on the climb. Alaphilippe, like I said, led in. And then when the pictures came back, it's going to be Ayuso from UAE Team Emirates on the front. But that's not going to happen too long before all of a sudden Remco Evenepoel starts pulling, and he's got Mas on his wheel. Just behind him, Primož Roglič, Ayuso are there, but not for very long. As we see Remco Evenepoel look back over his shoulder, he starts to see the gap happen, and then the Belgian rider just starts accelerating on the pedal. Before too long, only about 100, 200 meters later, Mas comes off and opens the gap, but now Remco Evenepoel's going solo. Behind Mas, we see the gap start happening as Ayuso's getting a gap on Primož Roglič. Now we go further down the hill, and there's still some more action back there because it was Yates that had a little bit of help with his teammate Lawson that was back there trying to pace him back on, but they won't see the front group and certainly won't see Remco Evenepoel because he's up the road going solo right now. With every pedal stroke, Remco Evenepoel's looking brilliant, not hesitating at all, catching guys from the original break as he's accelerating, putting time with every kilometer on today's stage. 9 here at the Vuelta a España on all the GC battles behind. Now with 1.6 kilometers to go, Primož Roglič is chasing Carlos Rodriguez and Ayuso from UAE Team Emirates, who are chasing Mas. Primož Roglič doesn't have fantastic legs on today's stage when we're talking about putting him up against the best in the world here at the Vuelta a España. But the 2 in front of him, they will catch Mas. Then Mas will hold on for dear life as the group in front's trying to still do damage control to Remco Evenepoel, who's flying up the road. Remco Evenepoel with 1 kilometer to go. He's got the false descent now as he starts the last final bit of this stage 9-2. He's accelerating, still catching the guys from the original break all the way up to today's finish line. He'll end up getting 4th on today's stage. Behind him, Ayuso will be 6th on the stage, about 35 seconds back. And then we're going to see the duel of Enric Mas and Carlos Rodriguez come in just 1 second apart from each other. Primož Roglič will come through on the stage, losing about 55 seconds on the stage to still keep his 3rd place on the general classification. Behind that, it was blown up all over on this climb as they were coming in 1s and 2s throughout today's stage. But when we look at the general classification, Remco Evenepoel, who padded his lead before Tuesday's individual time trial, has got to be happy at the end of today's stage with his 4th place finish on the stage. He added 35 seconds thereabouts on Ayuso's time and then almost a minute on Primož Roglic's time. So he's got to be incredibly happy going into this individual time trial of 31 kilometers after the first rest day here. Now keep in mind, they're up in the north of Spain and now they're going to travel all the way over to the south of Spain. And so the weather's going to change a little bit. They'll have a rest day and then it's the big individual time trial. But when you look at it on paper, Primož Roglič, who was looking solid at the beginning this first week of the Vuelta a España, now a little bit off here. And you look at this individual time trial, it's going to be a crucial time for Primož Roglič if he wants to keep battling for the red jersey here at the Vuelta a España. But also keep in mind, I told you, Sepp Kuss left today's race and didn't start with a fever. So it could be that whatever Sepp Kuss is feeling could be what's going around the Jumbo-Visma team. And I said that before when they went bad a couple stages ago, that could be something we have to keep in mind. I put it down to food and calories. But a little sickness going through and a little bug going through the whole Jumbo-Visma team could easily explain why we see Primož Roglic's form off just a little bit. Now, he's not far off, but he's definitely not 100% like we're used to seeing here at the Vuelta a España from the last 3 years when he won. So, if he can get some rest here, if he can come back and have at least a decent individual time trial, maybe his original form can come back if he can pass this bug that Jumbo-Visma could possibly have throughout the whole team here that sent Sepp Kuss home. Now, Remco Evenepoel, like I said, he's got to be dialed in for this individual time trial. He is a TT specialist, and if both riders, Primož Roglič and Remco Evenepoel, were both 100% on form, I would probably still give the nudge to Primož Roglič, but now with that little bit of form off from Primož Roglič, you got to believe Remco Evenepoel is the big-time favorite to win Tuesday's individual time trial at 31 kilometers in length, pancake flat. We know this kid has power, and he's going to deliver on the individual time trial. Want to cover one other thing, because there was an interview with our Ensman from DSM. Remember, he was that cat that was in that front group of 10 and dropped out. He was a threat on the general classification, and when we see the interview, he definitely doesn't look happy. He says every time when the journalist is asking him the questions, why did you drop out? He just keeps saying, I agreed with the team that that's what we should do. But you can tell he's clearly frustrated. And then later he talks about how he got caught behind that crash with Chris Harper and Theo Gegenhardt and spent a ton of energy chasing down the descent, and then was not good mentally going up the 3.9 kilometer climb. And hey, our Ensman, I wouldn't be good mentally either if I could have had a 4-minute gap coming into this last climb, starting with this group of 10 instead of back there being behind the crash of Theo Gegenhardt and Chris Harper. So you can understand why he's dejected and not very happy when he's given this interview. But every time when I'm sitting up here and when I was sitting on the couch watching it live, I could not understand why our Ensman and DSM would drop out of a group, a perfectly good breakaway of 10 riders with nobody chasing, and with Remco Evenepoel and Quick-Step taking a nature break when he decides to jump out of that front group of 10. Don't be a knucklehead. That was clearly a bad decision at that moment. Now, our Ensman, if you're going to be in that group of 10 and Quick-Step decide to start chasing, because remember, they hadn't started chasing when he comes out, but if they decide to start chasing full gas, drop out then. Don't drop out while they're taking a nature break. At that point in time, this is free time. Rotating through in a group of 10s, not that complicated. And when you have a crazy descent all the way from 20 kilometers to go, the last KOM, and then that really crazy descent from about 5.5 kilometers into the start of this last climb, that would have been money to start in that position and start 3.9 kilometers at 13% in the front group, rather back there battling for GC positions like we saw Primož Roglič had to do when he's 15, 20 guys back and trying to get up to the Julian Alaphilippe Quick-Step TGV train going into this final climb, because you know that had to hurt, and everyone behind Primož Roglic's wheel had to be suffering 100%. So that was my knucklehead take on today's race, along with Solarism attacking while his own teammates, his GC teammates, are off taking a nature break, getting an earful from the race leader's red jersey, the young race leader Remco Evenepoel arguing in his ear. Those are the two knucklehead mistakes on today's Stage 9 of the Vuelta a España. Make sure you like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the individual time trial for the Butterfly Effect.